Bene, buon pomeriggio a tutte e a tutti, benvenute e benvenuti al nostro secondo incontro con un ospite, diciamo, straniero, nel senso che non fa parte del nostro gruppo di ricerca, che ho il piacere di accogliere e presentare il professor Fouad Ben Ahmed, che tra l'altro è un buon amico del nostro centro di ricerca. Ricordo che lo scorso anno è stato visiting professor presso l'Università di Foggia per un mese, partecipando alle attività di ricerca, in particolare accompagnando il lavoro di ricerca del nostro dottorando assegnista, il dottor Giulio Navarra, che introdurrà il nostro ospite. L'incontro di oggi, come tra l'altro anticipato dal titolo, che è stato già diffuso e comunicato nei giorni precedenti, riguarderà in particolare un nuovo tipo di edizione critica, e in particolare le edizioni critiche di testi in arabo, nel caso specifico di testi di Averroè, che è conosciuto ai filosofi medievali soprattutto attraverso le traduzioni latine come una delle fonti più importanti della filosofia medievale latina occidentale. Oggi invece vedremo, proprio grazie al lavoro di ricerca importantissimo del professor Ben Ahmed, quali sono le caratteristiche e perché è importante l'edizione di testi arabi, in particolare del caso del filosofo Averroè. Non mi dilungo molto perché, come sapete, il tempo a disposizione non è tantissimo. Come al solito ci sarà eventualmente spazio per le domande alla fine, e lascio adesso la parola al dottor Giulio Navarra per la presentazione del nostro ospite e per la conduzione del seminario di oggi. Grazie ancora a tutte e a tutti, e poi ci risentiremo alla fine di questo seminario. Prego, Giulio.
Grazie Alessandra. Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you, Fuad, for accepting our invitation. Thank you to all to be here, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have Fuad Ben Ahmed, the professor of history of philosophy and theology, Kalam, in the Islamic context, which is a definition, huge definition of this field, of this discipline, from the Al-Qarawiyyin University, Rabat. He is an eminent scholar in the field. He is part of the Société de la Philosophie Médiévale, or part of the bureau of this society, director of Philosmus. Among his numerous publications on Averroism, I would like to focus our attention on the luminous, how to say, writing entry within the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy on Averroes, which is a huge and very in-depth view on Averroes, on Ibn Rushd, and numerous publications on al-Baghdadi, Ibn Tumlus, in particular two editions. The first is the philosophical works of al-Baghdadi, and the other is the Mukhtasar fil Mantiq, the compendium on logic of logic by Ibn Tumlus, a disciple of Averroes. Today, we have the pleasure to listen to him on this presentation entitled "The Publishing Manuscripts Post Ibn Rushd Era, Exploring the Why and How of Editing." So thank you, Fuad, to be here, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you, Giulio. I was enjoying listening to you while talking in Italian. I am so sorry that I'm ignorant, so I know only some words. But anyway, I am pleased to share with you some of my humble or modest experience on editing some texts from this era. So thank you so much for this invitation. Let's start. I opted for this title for many reasons. First of all, the main reason is that it deals with the topic the topic of this series of lectures. I mean, dealing with some manuscripts from medieval era. The second thing is that I will, I will talk about something that I know. I mean, I have already published something about it, so I can talk. About it with some. With some distance. I mean, after some years. So let's start from the introduction. Within the scholarly milieu engaged with the history of philosophy, it's widely recognized that this domain represents a scientific discipline that belongs to history by virtue of the nature of its activity, just as it belongs to philosophy by virtue of the nature of its subject matter. The history of philosophy in Muslim contexts largely aligns with this characterization. However, it bears distinctive features, setting it apart from other epochs in the history of philosophy, particularly modern and contemporary trends. This distinction arises from two primary factors. Firstly, the subject matter of philosophy in Muslim context is not a given or predetermined, but rather evolving and in the process of construction. Secondly, the historical roots of this philosophy are notably more entrenched than in other philosophical epochs. The reason why, when one delves into philosophical discourses within Muslim context, he navigates a multifaceted realm wherein philosophical inquiries intersect with historical narratives and philological quandaries. So you have at least, to bring together three disciplines or three traditions. You have to know you have to have some knowledge about history of philosophy and some, philological background, plus history or historical knowledge. Given the inherent challenge of tracing the origins of this discipline, known today as history of philosophy in the Muslim context, there exists a consensus that the 19th century marked the onset of flourishing interest in philosophy in the Muslim world, spurred either by Orientalists or historians of philosophy. So it was, historians of philosophy and Orientalists who started this discipline mainly in Europe, not elsewhere. Due to the fluid and the evolving nature of the subject matter, scholars were compelled to meld the edition and analysis of texts with a contextualization within the broader history of philosophy. So these scholars or these Orientalists, were, let's say it, were obliged to editing some texts, analyzing them, and contextualizing them in the history of philosophy. And this was the task mainly of historians of philosophy. Consequently, the momentum of textual and scholarly engagement appeared gradual and occasionally unbalanced. So from the beginning, there was no equilibrium in the field of interests, resulting in disparities in the illumination of certain texts or figures, while others remained shrouded in obscurity. A case in point is the comparative attention lavished upon luminaries like Avicenna, Averroes, or Ibn Rushd and Ibn Khaldun vis-a-vis lesser figures or lesser known figures such as Al-Baghdadi, Al-Amiri. Who knows about Al-Amiri or Al-Baghdadi, or even Ibn Tumlus? Therefore, many philosophers and scholars from the Middle Age have often been relegated to the periphery, regarded merely as adjuncts or minor figures orbiting the trajectory of more prominent names. Another conclusion that research in the 19th century was that philosophy and rational sciences has ended in the Muslim world, thus entering the long dark ages of decline. While I refrain here from delving into an exhaustive discourse on the notion that philosophical inquiry ceased with the passing of Ibn Rushd, Averroes, I affirm that rectifying this lacuna necessitates the publication and scrutiny of philosophical, logical, and scientific texts from the post-Ibn Rushd era. Otherwise, assertions regarding the continuity of rational and philosophical discourse in the Muslim world, or at least in the Islamic West, beyond Ibn Rushd remain unsubstantiated without textual evidence. Hence, I contend that concerted effort directed towards the exploration of texts from this period are instrumental in rectifying and reassessing long-held scholarly perspectives. Numerous scholars buttress my claim here, yet I shall confine my discourse to the study of one philosopher, an endeavor that has engrossed my attention from numerous years. I mean the Andalusian philosopher Ibn Tumlus. Ibn Tumlus was a philosopher, physician, and grammarian from Valencia, Muslim Spain. He studied with Ibn Rushd, Averroes, and served in the Almohad court, or the Almohad dynasty, as a physician of the Caliph An-Nasir. He passed away in 1223, 25 years after Ibn Rushd's death. Among his surviving works, we are aware of only 3 complete compositions: a contemporary on Ibn Sina medical poem, a treatise on mixing of necessary and possible propositions that exist only in Latin translation, doesn't exist, it's not available in Arabic, and then Al-Mukhtasar fil Mantiq, which I translate with Compendium on Logic. Although this paper exclusively examines Ibn Tumlus's Compendium on Logic, it is important to recognize that his other works are crucial. Let's go to the third slide. The fourth one, the next one. Next one. Thank you. Okay. So it is important to recognize that his other works are crucial for comprehending the reception of Ibn Rushd's ideas. Historically, scholars speculated that Ibn Tumlus's omission of Ibn Rushd's name in his Compendium on Logic suggested a rupture in their scholarly relationship, possibly due to a falling out towards the end of Ibn Rushd's career, known as the disgrace of Ibn Rushd or Averroes. However, a recent discovery of Ibn Tumlus's commentary on Ibn Sina's medical poem, it is this one that is in front of you. It's the beginning of the text. This is a commentary by Ibn Tumlus on Ibn Sina's Urjuza Tibbiya, or medical poem. I mean, it's available in many manuscripts in Morocco, Spain, and Tunisia, and maybe Algeria too. I'm not sure about Algeria, but I'm sure about Spain, Morocco, and Tunisia. However, I said, sorry to repeat. However, a recent discovery of Ibn Tumlus's commentary on Ibn Sina's medical poem by Muhammad al-Arabi al-Khattabi challenges and revises this interpretation. In this manuscript, Ibn Tumlus explicitly acknowledges Ibn Rushd as a scientific authority, and it introduces him as the chief of the philosophers and the most virtuous of the scholars, the sheikh or the master, and the most venerable faqih, the judge Abu al-Walid ibn Rushd, may God bless him. It is noteworthy that despite its crucial importance, this text, I mean, the Ibn Tumlus's commentary on Ibn Sina's medical poem, remains unedited and unstudied. So it's till now it's not edited. Ibn Tumlus's compendium on logic. Let's go to the previous one. Let's come back to the previous one. Yes, the one before. Thank you. Ibn Tumlus's compendium on logic, manuscript, of Escorial, Arabi 649, is, so far as we know, his only available work on logic in Arabic. The manuscript of it is a unicum. There is no available, other copy, elsewhere. The text is undated and not explicitly titled. Which is a problem for scholars, and among them, my work. Some scholars have proposed dates, but these remain problematic. Here are the parts of logic treated in the text in the order in which they appear in the Escorial manuscript. Let's go to the next one, or maybe the other one, please, the next one. Yes, that's it. So the contents in front of you, the contents of this manuscript. We have nine parts. The foreword, and then the first chapter, and then book of categories, and book of interpretation, book of syllogism, book of analysis, book of demonstration, and book of sophistical topics, and book of dialectic, book of rhetoric, and book of poetics. I will not enter in the details, but it's easily to notice that Ibn Tumlus followed Al-Farabi. They inserted following Al-Farabi, both of them inserted a new text in this corpus, which is the book of analysis, which is something new. There is no book of analysis, for example, in the logic written by Ibn Sina or Avicenna or even by Ibn Rushd. There's no text, entitled book of analysis. Is something new. The other distinctive feature, but this is common among philosophers in Muslim world, is the inclusion of book of rhetoric and the book of poetics in the organon. This is something also that we can find. This was what we can find in Ibn Sina's, Avicenna's logic, and in Al-Farabi, and even Ibn Rushd. The reader finds all of these parts in the critical edition I prepared to this text and published by Brill. In 2020. The slide before, if you don't mind. Thank you. The early scholarly interest in Ibn Tumlus took place in the 19th century with Asim Palacios. However, it stopped for at least 70 years before being revived again by contemporary scholars. In this stop deserves some considerations. Here, I will delve into the evolution and transformation of interest in this text from its inception to the present day and discuss why it captivates me or my interest. Let's go to the next slide. I mean, the slide after. That's it. Yes. Okay. As I said, Palacios, the pioneering Spanish Arabist, Miguel Athín Palacios, died in 1944, is renowned for his pivotal role in reintroducing Abu al-Hajjaj Yusuf Muhammad ibn Tumlus to contemporary scholarly discourse. I mean, this is something highly interesting. Palacios was the first one who introduced Ibn Tumlus to the modern scholarly, thereby significantly enriching our understanding on both his persona, I mean Ibn Tumlus's persona, and his literary author, driven primarily by the pursuit of sources attesting to the presence of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, I mean, a highly important Ash'arite and Sufi figure, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, within the Islamic West. Palacios embarked on a meticulous study of Ibn Tumlus. This scholarly endeavor was particularly galvanized by the initial expression of profound admiration towards Al-Ghazali, evident in the foreword of Ibn Tumlus's aforementioned work. I mean, the first part of his texts, notably devoid of any reference to his master or his mentor, Abu al-Walid ibn Rushd. So he prized a lot Al-Ghazali, and he didn't mention his real master Ibn Rushd. Initially motivated by fervent enthusiasm to undertake the editing and scholarly exploration of Ibn Tumlus's logical work, Palacios produced two seminal contributions. I mean, they are in front of you. An early French article titled La logique d'Ibn Tumlus d'Al-Sera in 1908, and a partial Arabic edition and Spanish translation entitled Introducción al arte de la lógica, the introduction to the art of logic, of 37 folios of the text. The slide after, if you don't mind. Thank you. That's it. I don't know whether it's clear or not, but I mean, this is the work. This is the edition or the partial edition by Palacios. It contains, I mean, an edition of the text, a Spanish translation with a long introduction. Despite his assurance to finalize a complete edition of the text, he found himself, or Palacios found himself, unable to fulfill this commitment. It is conceivable that Palacios' initial ardor, kindled by Ibn Tumlus's introductory words, gradually waned over time. It is probable that the enthusiasm that initially overwhelmed Palacios stemmed largely from Ibn Tumlus's skill in presenting a logical treatise in an engaging manner, as demonstrated in his foreword. However, Palacios later realized that subsequent sections of the work he had reviewed and edited primarily addressed logical issues without showing any noticeable influence or depth to Al-Ghazali. Palacios acknowledged this discrepancy in one of the footnotes of his edition. Specifically, he noted that aside from Al-Ghazali, he noted that aside from the foreword, I mean the first part of the text, the section he edited do not exhibit any significant influence from Al-Ghazali's treatise on logic. I presume that this realization directly contributed to his reluctance to finalize the editing of the remaining section of the texts, and then scholarships on Ibn Tumlus stopped. In addition, Asim Palacios asserted in his early study, I mean the French one, that Ibn Tumlus, and then I quote, exhibited a reserved and hesitant form of peripatetic Averroism, favoring the words of Al-Farabi for reading Aristotle's logic over those of Spanish philosophers like Ibn Baja, Avinpachi, and Ibn Rushd, Averroes, his mentor. Therefore, Asim Palacios left us with a strong conclusion that endured for almost a century. Ibn Tumlus, this is the conclusion, Ibn Tumlus, who supposedly favored being a disciple of, Al-Ghazali, and reverted to Al-Farabi in the domain of logic rather than following his mentor Ibn Rushd, Ibn Tumlus symbolizes the decline of Averroism in the Muslim world. Now, let's go to the second, the revival of scholarship on Ibn Tumlus. Yeah, this one, thank you. After 1916, scholarly investigation into Ibn Tumlus came to an abrupt halt for decades, leaving the remaining sections of his book unpublished, unedited, and lacking substantive studies that matched the caliber of Palacios's scholarship or the significance deserving of Ibn Tumlus's stature. The rebirth of scholarly interest in Ibn Tumlus following a period of dormancy is primarily attributed to Abdel-Ali Al-Amrani Jamal from the National Center for Scientific Research in Paris. Al-Amrani Jamal groundbreaking article, New Elements, yes, this is the article I mean, New Elements for the Study of the Introduction to the Art of Logic by Ibn Tumlus played a crucial role in highlighting the importance of Ibn Tumlus in his work from a perspective distinct from that presented by Palacios. This influential work facilitated the first comprehensive analysis and the intricate relationship between Ibn Tumlus and his mentor Ibn Rushd, notably evidenced in the introduction to Ibn Tumlus's commentary on Avicenna's medical poem already mentioned. Furthermore, it's initiated a critical internal examination of selected segments of the Compendium on Logic, revealing traces of Abu Nasr al-Farabi logical framework within. Al-Amrani Jamal suggests that this intellectual Farabian heritage clarifies Ibn Tumlus's notable omission of his mentor from his treatise on logic. So, in the beginning, we were in front of Al-Ghazali as the cause of the absence of Ibn Rushd or Averroes. Now we are in front of the authority of Al-Farabi. Let's move to the third, crucial contribution by another scholar from France, Maroun Awad. Indeed, Maroun Awad, yes, thank you. Maroun Awad, affiliated with the National Center for Scientific Research in Paris too, was cognizant of Al-Amrani Jamal's intention to publish an edition of Ibn Tumlus's logical treatises. In light of the delay in releasing this edition, Awad proceeded to undertake the editing and translation of a portion thereof, drawing from the insight provided by Al-Amrani Jamal aforementioned article and situating his effort within the theoretical framework established by the latter in his seminal works. However, Awad's scholarly pursuits did not unfold in isolation within his academic trajectory. Rather, it were underpinned by his extensive engagement over the years in editing Ibn Rushd's paraphrase on Aristotle's rhetoric. I mean, he moved from editing some texts by Ibn Rushd on Aristotle's rhetoric to editing a text by a disciple of Ibn Rushd himself, and his broader interest in the art of rhetoric among philosophers in Muslim context. Awad's edition of Ibn Tumlus's book of rhetoric, along with his analysis of some tracts from the book of Poetics by the same author, marked a significant milestone in modern scholarship, wherein Ibn Tumlus reclaimed his disciple who had erstwhile affiliated to the realm of Al-Ghazali or Al-Farabi. However, Awad maintained the belief that Ibn Rushd's influence did not encompass the entirety of Ibn Tumlus's compendium on logic. While the influence of Ibn Rushd is clearly, this is the conclusion by Awad, while the influence of Ibn Rushd is clearly evident in the second section of Ibn Tumlus's compendium on logic, particularly in the books of rhetoric and poetics, the first sections of the book, which were edited partially by Palacios and studied by Al-Amrani Jamal, was primarily influenced by Al-Farabi. This is why I titled this section by mapping the intellectual territories of Ibn Tumlus among Ibn Rushd and Al-Farabi. Now let's move to another highly interesting contribution by Tony Street. Yes, thank you. In his comprehensive 2004 article on the history of logic, particularly focusing on the theory of syllogistics in the Arab Islamic context, Tony Street from Cambridge University conducted an extensive survey covering the period from its emergence in the Muslim world around 750 to the approximately 1315. An observation of significance to this discussion is the limited geographical dissemination of Ibn Rushd's logical contributions, primarily reaching Europe through translations into Hebrew and Latin. Subsequent Arabic logical writings showed minimal engagement with Ibn Rushd's work. As a result, in a section titled Averroist Logicians, we can find this section, I mean, for the mentioned article, intended to explore post-Averroist development in the Arabic Islamic logic. There is a scant mention aside from a solitary treatise by Abu Muhammad ibn Malih al-Raqqad titled The Necessary, Possible and Absolute Propositions. Consequently, this area of inquiry remained largely unexplored. Tony Street encountered a dearth of materials in text to address this gap. Notably absent from this section on Averroist logicians are two pivotal figures, or two pivotal figures and their essential texts in logical development, especially Abu Bakr Bundud and his commentary on Avicenna's poem on logic, Escorial 627, as well as Ibn Tumlus's compendium on logic. I believe that two factors prevented Tony Street from including Ibn Tumlus in this section on Averroes logician dossier. Firstly, at that time, the text had not been published. Secondly, and this is more important than the first one, previous scholars or previous studies has generally categorized Ibn Tumlus as a disciple of Al-Ghazali and Al-Farabi rather than as an Averroist logician. So, I mean, he just ignored him based on the available, studies and partial edition. This distinctive theoretical backdrop informed my endeavor to publish a complete edition of the Compendium on Logic by Ibn Tumlus, thereby contributing to the ongoing scholarly discourse surrounding his work. I acknowledge that this endeavor would not have been possible without the foundational works of scholars who have paved the way before me. Expressing gratitude for their invaluable insights, I must admit that my motivations for publishing this book differ from those of Palacios or other scholars from the previous century, given the evolution of scholarly paradigms over time. Upon examining the totality of Ibn Tumlus's Compendium on Logic, it becomes challenging to support previous assertion. The text, the whole text of Ibn Tumlus, reveal significant reliance or relationship or reliance on the works of his mentor Ibn Rushd above all sources. I mean, when comparing the texts, we find that the first source of Ibn Tumlus was Ibn Rushd's commentaries on Aristotle's text. To identify these quotations, I have referred in the footnotes of my edition to Ibn Tumlus's source, as I have put in bold his quotations from Ibn Rushd. With this clarification, Ibn Tumlus's association with Ibn Rushd and his acquisition of knowledge from him, as narrated by Ibn al-Abbar and others, becomes unquestionable. Ibn Tumlus, as a pivotal figure in what I term the Averroist logician's dossier, and publishing his text significantly contributes to a deeper understanding of Ibn Rushd's legacy in the Muslim world. Editing manuscripts from this period is crucial for filling numerous gaps in our knowledge of history of logic and philosophy in Muslim context. Let's come to the conclusion. But let's conclude with an additional example. Yeah, this one. That underscores the importance of editing Ibn Tumlus's Compendium on Logic. Traditionally, scholars have suggested that Ibn Tumlus cited Al-Farabi without Al-Farabi's text without explicit attribution, potentially implying a lack of originality in his work based on Palacios' interpretation of a single word. The single word is غيري. This one we can find in the third line in yellow, غيري. Okay. In the foreword, however, a re-examination of the manuscript reveals Palacios's misreading. Let's proceed. In the manuscript, a specific phrase stands out. I will read in Arabic and then, yes, let's read this text in Arabic by Palacios. وها أنا أورد الآن ما قيل في منفعة هذه الصناعة وجدواها, a mistake there, ليقف الناظر فيها أولا على مقدار ما يحصل له, another mistake, من المعرفة, وليكون هذا القول يحثه ويحضه على تعلمها. ولما رأيت, and this is the crucial word, ولما رأيت كلام غير هذا الذي أسوقه كاملا بالغا في وصف هذه الصناعة, جئت به على وجهه من غير زيادة ولا نقصان. And then a full stop, and then قال. Okay, let's try to translate this part. Now I will try to translate it, because I mean I have only okay. Now I will mention what was said about the benefit and utility of this art, so that the person looking into will first consider the amount of knowledge he would acquire, so that this saying will encourage and motivate him to learn it. Okay? And when I saw at the end of the third line, sorry, when I saw ولما رأيت كلام غيري, sorry, can you, I cannot, yes, ولما رأيت كلام غير هذا, and when I saw that the words of someone else, sorry, and when I saw words other than the ones I'm quoting, complete and exhaustive in describing this art, I have faithfully produced them verbatim without any alteration. Palacios misread the word غير. He had to add a ya, because we have a ya. Can we come back to the manuscript? Giulio, can we come back to the manuscript, the previous one? Yes. You can see easily كلام غيري. There is a ya there after ra. So Palacios missed that ya, and then he misread the whole thing. And then many scholars, I mean, based on this reading, claim that Ibn Tumlus doesn't recognize his sources, while it is clear here that the words by Ibn Tumlus states that when I saw the speech of someone else about this art, this speech that I'm bringing here as a whole in describing this art, so I didn't modify anything, and I cited it as a whole. Those are the words by Ibn Tumlus. And then a full stop, and then he said, قال, in the last line, refers to Al-Farabi, not Ibn Tumlus. It means قال Al-Farabi said, or Al-Farabi says. And then we find ourselves in front of a text quoted by Ibn Tumlus from إحصاء العلوم, the enumeration of sciences. Anyway, I presume that Palacios' misreading of this particular word within the quote contributed to scholars' misperception that Ibn Tumlus was citing without disclosing his sources. So many scholars accused Ibn Tumlus for being not original, or not authentic. I mean, some are friends of mine, Joseph Puig Montada, some ancient scholars like González Palencia, among others. But anyway, when reading and rereading this text, or editing this text, we find easily that Ibn Tumlus, I mean, acknowledges his sources. In conclusion, I contend that editing Ibn Tumlus's work serves multiple objectives. Modestly speaking, firstly, the first objective is that this edition or editing this text provide foundational material for scholars and restore Ibn Tumlus's rightful position in the history of Arabic logic following Ibn Rushd. This encompasses the reception of Ibn Rushd's texts in the thought, illustrating their adaptation, development, or critique within these intellectual contexts. The second objective is that the editing this text clarifies the intellectual lineage which has been ambiguously portrayed for an extended period. I mean, whether it was an Averroist or not, was a Ghazali's disciple or not. And the third objective, editing this text address the observed gap in discussions concerning rational sciences after Ibn Rushd's era. Thank you so much for your patience and attention.
Thank you, Fuad. Thank you for your presentation, which was really full of many insights. And now we can start with questions if there is anyone who wants to give to ask some questions. And maybe I can start.
Yes, let's go.
Because you showed the relevance of sources in making a critical edition, also the research, the importance of the research of the previous scholarship in respect to a new edition or making an edition of a text.
Giulio, scusa, non ti senti bene, dovresti alzare il volume.
Do you hear me now? Mi sentite?
Ti senti
Can you
malissimo.
speak up more? Yes.
Maybe now you hear me because
Yes,
okay,
go ahead.
it's my microphone.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So you show the importance, the relevance of the research of the previous scholarship in making an edition. So how is important to know the previous scholarship, so the research made by scholars before, also in order to do an edition of a text which was started to be edited at the beginning of the century. I have many questions, but just one which is I think it's really interesting. Do you mention the book of analysis?
Non sono andata, Ubi.
Okay, this was the
Ubi.
Analytica Priora, the analytics by Aristotle. Do you hear me? Okay. The Analytica Priora, the book of analytics is a reference to the Analytica Priora, Analytica Posteriora by Aristotle, or has nothing to do with Aristotle. Thank you. The microphone. Sorry.
You can go back to this slide if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there. Yeah. You can easily, I mean, notice that we have prior analytics. I mean, okay, and we have also the second analytics. I don't know where where, I mean, maybe I missed it, but we have, yes, no, we have the second or posterior analytics, book of demonstration, and we have prior analytics. But in between, we have a new text, book of analysis. It's not, I mean, posterior analytics. It's not prior analytics. It's something new that deals mainly with topics abstracted from any example. So for Ibn Tumlus and Al-Farabi, I mean, they provides us with a full or a whole book that deals with topics that we can use whether we do demonstration or dialectics or rhetoric and so on. In this text is independent of the two traditional texts, I mean, prior analytics and posterior analytics.
Okay, okay, really interesting.
This is a Farabian tradition.
Okay, okay. In order always in referring to Farabi and Ghazali.
Yes.
As masters.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There is anyone who wants to ask some questions, please. No one?
The Ariana, but the microphone.
Arianna, yeah, we need your microphone. Thank you.
Mi sentite? Sì.
Yeah, we hear you.
Just out of curiosity, how does an edition in Arabic works? I know, it's very general.
Yeah, but can you explain your question? Just, I mean, to see from where I can start.
I don't know. Maybe there are some abbreviations, or the words are entirely words written.
I cannot see you, but Giulio, can you help on this?
Yeah, she asked if there are abbreviations, because in Latin we have abbreviations,
Yes.
and so she would like to know if there are abbreviations in Arabic, or the words are entirely written, or
Yeah, it's it depends. Yes, thank you for this technical. I mean, for this technical question. Yes, they used many abbreviations, but it depends on text. For example, in some religious texts or some religious studies, we can find, instead of someone told us, an abbreviation of this word with na as an abbreviation of haddathana. I mean, someone told us, or somebody told us, instead of this word, only two letters, na. For example, another example that we can find in this text, one letter above, for example, above the word, or a word, like, for example, kha. It means that in khata, or incorrect or false. But sometimes we use the same abbreviation. We can, when we find it in the margin, it means in another copy, in a different copy. I mean, we have this written in this copy, but in another copy we find this word. So it means في نسخة أخرى. we have there are many abbreviations, and we have also some text that deals with these. Sometimes these abbreviations are not so clear, but some scholars deal with this and published some explanation of these words. What can I add as an example? For example, instead of but this is not an abbreviation. Instead of numbering, for example, the page, I mean, the copyist wrote the first word in the next page at the end of the page. I mean, the last word you find here, it's the first word you find in the next page. Sometimes you have to read this first and then you move to the other one. You find also an abbreviation, bad. It means you read this before this. I mean, some kinds of abbreviation. There are some symbols. There is no clear interpretation of this. Like I don't know how can I read it, but it's like with a dot inside. It's like this with a dot inside. Maybe Giulio also is familiar with this kind of symbols. Some scholars say that this abbreviation means here the copyist marks his the end of his revision before reviewing the text or moving to the other paragraph. I mean, he marked the stop in this place with this symbol. Well, there are many symbols that are understandable, but there are others that, I mean, we have only some interpretation we are not sure whether it's clearly the meaning he intended, the author or the copyist intended. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you for anyone else wants to?
Yes, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
I don't know anything about the Arab world, but I would like to know if there are differences or which are the most important differences between making an edition for an Arab text in Arabic and a Latin text, a medieval Latin text. And if there is moments in which both tradition crosses. So, for example, you maybe have a text in both languages, and how do you deal with the edition of that text?
Can you repeat, please, the first part of your question?
Yeah, how does doing a critical edition for a Latin text differ from a medieval Latin text differs from doing a medieval critical edition from an Arabic text?
I mean, I don't know whether I would be convincing if I give this example. Let's talk, for example, let's mention this. If I'm editing a text by Ibn Rushd or Averroes, so, and the text I have in front of me is a Unicon, but I know that this text is already translated into Latin or already translated into Hebrew. So in this case, I need to compare. But I don't know if we need, when we have, for example, multiple copies or many copies, we do not need to consider, for example, translations. I mean, unedited translations, for example, of text by the same author. It's like let's say you are editing Spinoza's text, and Spinoza is already translated, for example, into English, and though you have, I don't know whether you will need to look at the English translation while you are editing, for example, the Latin or the original text. I don't know whether I understood your question well, but this is what I got from your question.
Yeah, also even methodologically, if there are methodological differences between doing both types of editions.
Yes, there are actually I can we can talk for a long time about the differences, but let's say first of all some scholars from the Arab world or the Muslim world claim that we have our own tradition of editing text.
Mm.
Others say that let's stop it. We do need some philological background. We do need to, let's say, to prepare a history of the text, or I don't know, the tradition in Latin in Latin tradition of editing the text. So, and we know also that even the first edition of Arabic texts in philosophy or in sciences, or I mean in I don't know, even in religious sciences, the ones who started this tradition were some Orientalists. I mean, so, and the first modern Arab scholars, I mean, followed these Orientalists for one reason: they were their students. I mean, some Orientalists worked in Germany, in Paris, but they worked also in Egypt. So, and I mean, the next scholars, I mean, learned with them, and then, I mean, they followed their methodology. But anyway, the background also, or the frame also is not the same. While, for example, I mean, some scholars, I mean, focus on some texts and they neglect some texts. For example, how do you explain, for example, some texts by Ibn Rushd are not edited by these scholars, these Orientalists? Because they do not represent any additional evidence to the problematic they have, I mean, in the Middle Age. Why? Because these texts by Ibn Rushd deals primarily with some issues that belong to the Muslim world. For example, doesn't belong to the I don't know, to noetics or to other problematic that has to do with the intellect or the active intellect. For example, Fasl al-Maqal. Another example is Al-Kashf an Manahij al-Adilla. We have many texts neglected by modern European scholars. Why? Because they see that they're not so interesting. These texts, paradoxically, these texts, we find many editions of these texts in the Muslim or in the Arab world. Why? Because they are, for example, they deal with some let's say, it's not a good thing to say, but let's say with local issues or local problematic. They are not Latin or Hebraic or Hebrew problematic, but they are Islamic problematic. So this was what can I say about your question for now.
Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Thank you.